I worked in the United States for 38 years. I paid over $180,000 in taxes. I raised 3 American children. And one morning they put me in handcuffs in a parking lot and sent me back to a city I barely recognize anymore. Let me tell you what it's like to build everything and lose it before breakfast. But let me start at the beginning. Apatzingan, Michoacán, 1986. I was 27 years old and my family was in debt to a man who owned a store on the main road. My father had lost his job at the sugar mill. He was 54 years old and too proud to ask anyone for help. I was the oldest, so it was me or nobody. The morning I left, my mother woke up at 4:30 and made tortillas on the wood stove. She didn't say this was the last time. She just made the tortillas like she always did. The sound of the comal, the smell of wood smoke and toasted corn, and wrapped them in a cloth and put them in a plastic bag with a rosary and a small holy card of the Virgin of Guadalupe. She said, "Cuídate, mijo. That's it. Take care of yourself." My father shook my hand at the gate. Long, firm, no words. I walked down the dirt road with my backpack. At the corner, I looked back. The kitchen window was still lit. I never went back to live there again. I promised my father I'd send money every month until the debt was gone. I promised my mother I'd be back in 2 years. 2 years became 40. You know how that happens. You get there and the work is there and the need is there. And you keep saying, next year, next year, next year. The crossing took 2 attempts. The first time, Border Patrol picked us up after 6 hours in the desert. They sent us back to Tijuana. 3 days later, we tried again. I paid a coyote named El Toruno $1,400. Money I borrowed from an uncle in Guadalajara. 14 people in the group. The second night in the desert, a woman from Oaxaca collapsed about 50 meters behind us. She weighed almost nothing. That's the thing that scared me. You put your hands under someone's arms and feel how little is left of them. The coyote said to leave her. I said no. I put her on my back and carried her almost 2 kilometers to a water point. I never learned her name. I never saw her again after San Diego. But for 38 years, every time I saw a woman with features from Oaxaca walking down 26th Street, I looked for a second. Just instinct, just to make sure. I fell on a rock in the dark on that second night, right knee. I wrapped it with my own shirt and kept walking. The scar is still there, 7 centimeters, purplish. I know every scar on this body and exactly how I got it. We crossed in September 1986. I arrived in Chicago 3 days later. I had never felt cold like that in my life. 11 days after I landed, I was washing dishes at a restaurant called La Paloma on 26th Street in Pilsen for $3.35 an hour. 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. My first purchase in America was a pair of blue wool gloves from a Walgreens on 18th Street. $2.79. I wore them until there were holes in all 5 fingers. The shock of Chicago wasn't the cold. It was the silence. In Apatzingan, the street had noise. Chickens, children, music from some window. Chicago in October was gray and enormous and quiet, in a way that felt like the city was ignoring you on purpose. But things started to get better. By 1991, I had a job at Midwest Steel Fabricators on Kedzie Avenue. A Polish-American supervisor named Dennis Kowalski pointed at a MIG welding machine on my first day and said, "You know this?" I said yes. I made the first weld. He looked at it, didn't say anything, and walked away. I learned later that was the highest compliment Dennis gave. Silence meant yes. I worked at that factory for 31 years, 5:45 in the morning until 2:30 in the afternoon. Sometimes double shifts until 10 at night when there was a deadline. I cut plasma, welded MIG, assembled structural steel for industrial construction, beams, supports, equipment frames, things that are still standing in buildings around Chicago right now. I know because I put them there. In 1991, I met Guadalupe at Sunday Mass at San Pio V Church in Pilsen. She was from Uruapan, Michoacan, the next state over from mine, and she had a red coat that made it impossible to concentrate on the sermon. We had 3 children. Macedonio, we call him Mako, born in 1993 at Stroger Hospital. Jesus Gerardo, Chuy, born in 1996, and Rosario Consuelo, Chayo, born in 2001 at Rush University Medical Center. 3 American citizens. 3 kids who grew up on 26th Street, went to Chicago public schools, learned English before they learned Spanish, and became more American every year, which is what I wanted, exactly what I wanted. I sent money home every month. The first 10 years, $400. The second 10, $600. Over my whole life, I sent approximately $187,000 back to Apatzingan. I paid for my parents' house, 3 bedrooms, brick, built in stages between 1992 and 1998. I helped my brother Gerardo open a tire shop. I paid for my sister Patricia's husband's medical treatment. I sent money through Western Union and paid $12 to $18 in fees every time. Over the years, I paid about $4,300 just in transfer fees. I mention this not to complain. I mention it because I want you to understand what the math of being an immigrant looks like. And I paid taxes. From the beginning, money was withheld from my paycheck. Medicare, Social Security that I'll never collect, federal and state income tax. From 2001 on, I filed formally with an ITIN number because I wanted to do it right. Over 38 years, I paid approximately $183,000 in taxes to a government that did not know I existed. I never applied for Medicaid, never took food stamps, never asked for anything. That's not heroism. That was fear mostly. But it was also, honestly, pride. I was paying my way. I was here doing what I came to do. In 2009, the factory gave me the Employee of the Year award. A plaque with my name on it, Aurelio Fuentes, in the entryway of the building. Dennis handed it to me in front of the whole floor. I brought it home and put it on the kitchen table and sat looking at it for a while. The man who gave it to me probably didn't know I was undocumented. I didn't tell him. 3 weeks later, I was in a Mexican supermarket on 26th Street, in line at the register. The man behind me started talking, loudly, not to anyone in particular. These people take our jobs and send all the money back. I had the plaque at home. I had filed $7,200 in taxes that year alone. I said nothing. I paid for my groceries in cash. I walked out. On the sidewalk, I stopped for a second. I don't know why exactly. Then I kept walking. I never told my kids about that day. You know how it is. You learn to carry certain things alone. Can you imagine that? Being given an award for your work on a Thursday, and on a Saturday, being reminded that people look at you and see something to be gotten rid of. Can you imagine that being your life for 38 years? Not once, not twice, constantly. The best moment of my life in Chicago was Christmas 2005. Chayo was 4 years old, asleep on the couch, holding a stuffed bear. Mako and Chewy, 12 and 9, were fighting over the TV remote. Guadalupe was stirring pozole in the kitchen. It was snowing outside, falling over 26th Street, over the same street where I'd started when I arrived. I sat by the window and watched it. I thought, this is everything I came for. I never said it out loud, but it was true. Guadalupe and I separated in 2011. The details of a marriage are private. What I'll say is that she got her green card through a church program in 2005, and I was happy for her, and I was ashamed it wasn't me. And those two things lived together in me for a long time. She stayed in the Chicago area. We still talk once a month. It's polite. It's full of spaces. The years between the separation and the arrest, I worked. That's the honest answer. I got up at 4:45 every morning without an alarm, made coffee and beans and 2 tortillas, and went to the factory. I mentored younger workers. Tyrone Webb, a young black welder. I taught him to use the plasma cutter in 2015. He called me boss as a joke that became a habit. The Mexicans on the floor called me El Profe because I corrected mistakes, because I wouldn't let anyone do something wrong twice. In 2015, Tyrone complained that the factory was old and dirty and didn't deserve the care we put into it. I told him, take care of the place where you work, because one day you leave and the place stays. I meant it as advice. I had no idea I was describing my own life. I should have done the papers. In the 90s, there were programs, community offices helping people regularize their status. I didn't go. I was scared to appear. Scared that showing up somewhere official would make me visible in the wrong way. That fear cost me everything. I need to say that clearly, not so you feel sorry for me, so that if someone watching this is in that position, they don't make the same calculation I made. March 14th, 2022. A Tuesday, 6:22 in the morning. I had just parked at the factory. I opened the trunk to get my lunch and my work gloves. A regular day, the same as 11,400 days before it. An agent came up behind me and said my full name. Aurelio Macedonio Fuentes Bravo. Nobody had said my full name like that since my mother died in 2016. Something in me stopped before the handcuffs. You are under arrest by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. I said nothing for almost a minute. Then, quietly, my gloves are in the trunk. Can I close the car? They didn't let me. Dennis was outside that morning, earlier than usual. Tyrone was arriving on his bicycle. Fermin pulled into the next parking spot 3 minutes later and saw the SUV leaving. When the car passed in front of the factory, I looked through the window. Dennis was standing in the parking lot, a cigarette between his fingers that he hadn't lit. We looked at each other for 2 seconds as the car passed. He didn't wave, I didn't wave. The car turned the corner and the factory disappeared. I looked forward. I thought about the open trunk. I thought about the lunch in the parking lot. I thought that the beans were going to get cold. The audit had started in 2021. A routine I-9 check on the company flagged irregularities in documents for me and 4 other workers. The company was fined. We were referred to ICE. 38 years, 0 criminal record, 0 unpaid fines. I was a man who had never given anyone a problem except the problem of existing without the right paper. I spent 47 days in the Broadview staging facility. 18 men in a cell, 6 bunk beds, lights that never went fully off, food that didn't have a name, a 23-year-old Honduran kid named Oscar who cried at night, a 61-year-old man from Oaxaca caught in a different audit at a different company. We talked about cities in Mexico we barely remembered. Chayo came 4 times. She brought a folder with every text document I'd ever filed, photographs of the grandchildren, a handwritten letter that no court would accept as evidence. She cried without making a sound, which is worse. Mako came twice. He stood there for 3 minutes before he could speak. He said, "We'll visit, Dad. We'll come see you." He hasn't yet. I'm not angry. I understand. The last time I saw them in person was May 8th, 2022. Broadview, visiting room, glass between us, yellow plastic telephone. The room smelled like hospital cleaning products. Chayo had the folder in her hand. Mako had his palm flat against the glass. I put my hand on the same spot on my side. The glass had the temperature of glass. I told Chayo, "Take care of your brothers. You've always been the strongest one." I told Mako, "Teach Dylan to play soccer properly." I didn't get to tell Chewy anything. He was at work. He didn't make it in time. I was deported on May 9th, 2022. The flight left O'Hare at 6:15 in the morning. I was handcuffed until boarding. 23 deportees, 2 escort agents. I had a gray backpack with 3 shirts, 2 pants, my documents, a phone without an American chip, 47 printed photos of my children and grandchildren, my mother's crucifix, and the Employee of the Year plaque that Dennis had sent to Broadview through Mako, wrapped in newspaper. I arrived back in Apatzingan with $847 that Chayo had put in the bag. It's been almost 4 years. I live in the house I built for my parents. 3 bedrooms, 2 of them used as storage now. A flat-screen television my brother Gerardo gave me. A double bed where 2 lives' worth of memories sleep. My body still wakes up at 5 o'clock every morning. There's nowhere to go at 5 in the morning in Apatzingan. I get up anyway. I do small welding jobs in the backyard. The same work I did on weekends in Chicago for 30 years. I make about $350 a month. I made $3,920 in Chicago. Mako calls every Sunday at 6 in the evening, Chicago time. Sometimes the call lasts 4 minutes, sometimes 40. I can hear Dylan in the background sometimes. He's 8 years old, speaks English, calls me Grandpa Aurelio. Sophia is 5. She has never met me in person. I have 47 photos of them on my phone. My favorite is Dylan in a baseball uniform, 2023. I've never seen him play. Chayo calls 3 times a week. She learned Spanish deliberately, took lessons in college because she wanted to talk to me without a translator. She's still paying for an immigration lawyer, Patricia Estevez, out of her nursing salary. The case is in federal appeal. The 10-year re-entry ban is still in effect. I bought a new mattress for the guest room in October, just in case. Chewy calls on my birthday and Christmas. The conversations are short and careful, like two people who love each other and don't know what to say. I understand that too. The people of Apatzingan look at me with a kind of respect mixed with something else. The uncle who lived in the United States and came back old. A niece of 12 asked me once if I was American. I didn't know how to answer. I am not American. I am not quite from here anymore either. I say el parking and okay in the middle of Spanish sentences and people notice. I eat my refried beans the way I learned to make them in Chicago, slightly different from what my mother made. I exist between two places, and I fit completely in neither. Chayo went to the factory a few months ago. Midwest Steel Fabricators, 4712 South Kedzie Avenue. She walked in and asked to see the entryway. The plaque is still there. Aurelio Fuentes, Employee of the Year 2009. She sent me a photo. I saved it as the wallpaper on my phone. I told Tyrone in 2015 to take care of the place where he worked, because one day he'd leave and the place would stay. I thought I was talking about pride in your work. I was really, without knowing it, describing what was going to happen to me. I took care of that factory for 31 years. I took care of Chicago for 38. The city stayed, the factory stayed, the plaque stayed. I left. That's what nobody tells you about immigration. Not the hard part of getting there, not the loneliness of the first years, not even the fear that lives in your chest for decades. What nobody tells you is that you can do everything right. Work, pay taxes, raise your children, win your award, never ask for anything, and still be erased. Because erasing you doesn't require you to have done something wrong. It only requires that you never got the paper that made your existence official. My name is Aurelio Macedonio Fuentes Bravo. I am 67 years old. I am from Apatzingan, Michoacan. I spent 38 years in Chicago. I gave that city everything I had. My youth, my strength, my best years, my parents' funerals. I missed both of them, afraid to lose the job and not be able to come back. The plaque with my name is still in the entryway of a factory on Kedzie Avenue. I am not here asking for pity. I am here so that the number of years I worked stops being a statistic and starts being a person. If this story is worth something to you, share it, because there are thousands of Aurelio Fuenteses in this country right now, working, paying, building, invisible, and most of them will never get to tell this part. I want to ask you something. If you had worked 38 years in a country, paid $183,000 in taxes, raised 3 American children, and one morning they put handcuffs on you in a parking lot and sent you back, what would you have said to your kids through a glass window, knowing it was the last time? Leave your answer below. I read every one.